The snowstorm had begun earlier than anyone expected, a violent curtain of white swallowing the city in a matter of hours. Wind surged between the skyscrapers like a living thing, howling against glass windows and raking across rooftops with icy claws. People hurried home early, fearing the worst, but not Adrian Vale. Storm or no storm, the CEO of Vale Corp refused to adjust his schedule for anything, not the weather, not holidays, and certainly not feelings. He walked through his building with the same expression he wore every day, cold, controlled, untouchable. Tonight, he had just concluded a meeting that left half a dozen executives trembling. He dismissed them with only a nod before stepping out of the boardroom, adjusting the cuffs of his suit jacket. To him, emotions were weak links, compassion was a luxury he had long abandoned. He didn't believe in softness. He believed in results. The elevator pinged softly as he descended to the lobby, where the marble floors gleamed under the golden lights. Employees clearing out for the storm whispered his name with fear-coated respect. Adrian didn't bother to acknowledge any of them. He had no interest in being liked. No interest in connection. His life was work. Everything else was background noise. That was the way he had chosen it, and it was a choice he had never questioned. Until tonight. Just as he stepped through the revolving doors, the wind whipped in harshly, flinging a burst of snowflakes into the warm lobby. Adrian instinctively tightened his expensive coat around him, silently cursing the weather. As he took his second step forward, a movement in the corner of his eye made him pause. A small figure stood near the wall, barely reaching the height of the reception desk. Something about the stillness of the figure struck him as wrong. He turned fully, brows narrowing. A little girl. She couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. Her jacket was far too thin for this kind of weather, a faded purple coat with a broken zipper that barely closed. Snow clung to the ends of her dark hair. Her sneakers were soaked, leaving small, melting prints on the marble floor. She stood shivering, hands clutched together so tightly her knuckles turned white. And then she looked up at him. Her eyes, large, frightened, desperate, locked onto his, and Adrian felt something strange twist in his chest. An unfamiliar discomfort. He forced himself to maintain his usual cold composure. "You're not supposed to be here," he said firmly. "Where are your parents?" The little girl swallowed hard. Her lips trembled before she even spoke. "Yes, sir. Please," her voice cracked. For the first time that evening, the bustling lobby fell silent. Even the receptionist stopped typing. "Please," she whispered again, tugging at the sleeve of his coat, her cold fingers barely making contact. "I need help." Adrian suppressed a sigh, irritated that anyone, let alone a child, would reach out to him. "Who are you? And why are you in my building?" "My name is Lily," she said softly. I came to find you." He blinked, surprised by the directness. No one ever sought him willingly unless they wanted money or fear. "Find me," he repeated. "Why?" She took a shaky breath. "My mom works here, in the janitorial night shift. She didn't come home last night." Something cold but unfamiliar pricked at the back of Adrian's mind. "She always comes home," Lily continued, her voice growing smaller, more fragile. "She always picks me up from school. Always. But last night she didn't. And today she didn't answer her phone. And no one knows where she is." Her shoulders collapsed. Tears filled her eyes, turning them glassy. "I'm scared," she whispered. "And I didn't know where else to go." Adrian stared at her, speechless for the first time in years. A child, alone, terrified, coming into a skyscraper during a snowstorm just to ask him for help. Him, the man who avoided emotional matters as if they were poison. He almost said the words he always said. "I'm not the right person. Or call the authorities, or this is not my job." But then she added, voice barely audible, "Mom said if I ever got really scared, I should look for you. Because you're the boss, and you can fix things. And because somewhere inside you, there's still a good man." The words hit him harder than any physical blow. Someone thinking there was goodness in him. Someone telling their child to trust him. The idea felt foreign, impossible. His tone softened despite himself. "What is your mother's name?" "Elena," Lily whispered. "Elena Torres." Time seemed to freeze. Adrian knew that name. Elena. the quiet woman who cleaned the executive floors with her hair tied back and her badge always hanging crookedly because she rushed too much. Elena, the woman who once accidentally dropped a cleaning cloth in the elevator and apologized profusely while he glared coldly. The woman who, after he snapped at her, lifted her chin and said, voice gentle but firm, being rich doesn't make you better, sir. How you treat people does. He had never forgotten her. Not because of anger, but because she was the first person in years who had spoken truth to him without fear. And now she was missing. Adrian straightened abruptly, every instinct shifting from detachment to tension. Come with me. Lily followed him quickly, clutching her coat tighter. They entered the surveillance room, where security officers jumped to their feet at the sight of the CEO. Pull up the footage for the last 24 hours, Adrian ordered. Every exit, every hallway, parking garage, now. The officers scrambled, screens lighting up with dozens of angles. Lily stood beside him, eyes wide and hopeful, as they scanned the footage. Hours passed by in minutes until... There, Lily breathed, pointing at the screen. It was 2:03 a.m. Elena appeared on camera walking toward the staff parking garage. She looked exhausted but normal, her bag slung over one shoulder. Adrian leaned closer. Elena walked toward the far end of the garage. And the camera flickered, static, then nothing. When the image returned 6 seconds later, she was gone. Adrian's jaw tightened. Rewind. They did. Same glitch, same gap, same disappearance. Sir, the head of security said cautiously, this looks like a manual interference. Someone tampered with the footage. Lily's small hand tightened on Adrian's coat. Did someone take my mom? He didn't lie. Yes, he said quietly. And we're going to find her. He turned sharply. Get my car, now. The head of security hesitated. But sir, the storm. Move. Within minutes, Adrian was shoving open the lobby doors again, the wind slashing across his face. He opened the passenger side of his car and lifted Lily in, something he had never done for anyone. He slammed the door shut before the cold could swallow her. When he got into the driver's seat, Lily looked at him, her voice still trembling. Sir, why are you helping me? He started the engine, eyes fixed ahead. Because someone needs to. As they pulled out of the driveway, snow blasted the windshield so violently it felt like the world was trying to blind them. Street visibility was nearly zero, but Adrian drove with a focus so sharp it could cut steel. Do you know where she catches the bus after work? He asked. Yes, Lily said quickly. 3 blocks away, near the old hardware store. Then that's where we start. The roads were almost deserted. A few stranded cars sat abandoned near curbs, their hazards blinking hopelessly through the storm. The city felt like a ghost town swallowed by ice. Yet Adrian pressed forward, knuckles whitening around the steering wheel. He kept glancing at Lily out of the corner of his eye. She sat curled up in his scarf. He had wrapped it around her earlier, barely thinking about the gesture. Her small frame shook from cold and fear and exhaustion. But her eyes held something that pierced him deeply. Hope in him. By the time they reached the bus stop, the world around them looked like a frozen wasteland. Snow piled in thick layers. The bench was covered in a white blanket. But something metallic glinted near the curb. Adrian stepped out into the storm, boots crunching through ice. He reached down and lifted the object from the snow. A keychain. Elena's keychain. The one with the tiny silver star Lily had given her. His stomach dropped. He scanned the ground, and his heart pounded harder when he saw the faint outline of footprints in the snow, and drag marks trailing toward a nearby alley. He turned sharply. Stay in the car, he ordered Lily. Do not move. He expected resistance, but Lily simply nodded, her trust absolute. Adrian followed the trail. The wind howled, erasing the footprints behind him, as if trying to bury the truth. The prints led to a metal door on the side of a large, nearly abandoned warehouse. The lock was broken, freshly forced. He pushed the door slowly. It creaked open into darkness. The air inside was colder than outside, thick with dust and the smell of rusted metal. Adrian stepped in cautiously, and then something happened that made his blood turn to ice. A small cry, weak, pain-filled. Lily's voice suddenly echoed from behind him. She had followed him despite his warning. Sir, did you hear that? Before he could scold her, the cry came again. Closer this time. They followed it deeper into the warehouse, weaving through old machinery and crates until there, under a broken skylight letting in a thin stream of snowy light, was a lone chair. And tied to it, Elena. Her head hung forward, her hair messy and tangled. Bruises covered her face. Her hands were bound behind her. She was breathing, but barely. Lily screamed, running ahead. "Mom!" Adrian sprinted after her, dropping to his knees beside Elena. He shook her gently. "Elena," he called, voice cracking. "Elena, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her face. Adrian," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. He didn't waste a second untying the ropes, fury and fear clashing inside him like a storm of their own. Lily buried herself against her mother, sobbing uncontrollably. "Elena," Adrian said urgently, "who did this?" She coughed, lips trembling. Someone from your company. Someone who didn't want me to talk." The air grew heavy. Adrian leaned closer. "Who?" She swallowed weakly. "Your partner. Marcus Hale." Adrian froze. Marcus. His closest friend. His most trusted partner. His right hand. And he had kidnapped Elena. Before Adrian could speak, footsteps echoed from deeper inside the warehouse. Slow. Heavy. Familiar. A shadow detached itself from the darkness. Marcus stepped forward. "Well," he said with a cold, cruel smirk, "isn't this a surprise?" Adrian slowly rose to his feet, positioning himself protectively in front of Elena and Lily. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "You laid a hand on my employee, and touched a hair on this child's head." Snow drifted in through the broken skylight as the tension thickened. Marcus's smile widened. "You're too late, Adrian." But Adrian's eyes had changed. Cold, sharp, ready for war. The storm outside raged harder, as if echoing the explosion waiting to happen inside the warehouse. And in that moment Lily grabbed Adrian's coat and whispered, voice shaking. "Sir, please don't let him take my mom again." That was the promise that hardened Adrian's heart into something lethal. He would protect them, no matter the cost. Hook end of chapter 1. Right pointing arrow. What none of them knew was that Marcus wasn't alone in the darkness, and the truth about Elena's disappearance was darker, deeper, and far more dangerous than any of them imagined. The warehouse groaned under the weight of the storm, metal beams trembling as wind slammed against its walls. Snowflakes drifted through the shattered skylight, catching the dim light as they fell in slow, eerie spirals. For a moment, time felt suspended, Adrian standing rigidly in front of Lily and Elena, and Marcus emerging from the shadows like a nightmare stepping into reality. Adrian's pulse hammered in his ears, each beat fueled by rage and something deeper, fear, protectiveness, a determination he had never felt so violently before. Lily clung to the hem of his coat, trembling so hard he could feel it. Elena, barely conscious, lifted her head enough to see Marcus, and instinctively turned her face away as if his presence alone made her wounds burn again. Marcus stopped several feet away, brushing snow from the shoulders of his expensive coat. Even in a warehouse where the cold bit into bone and breath turned to mist, he looked as polished as ever, calm, smug, poisonous. "You weren't supposed to find her," he said casually, as if they were discussing a missing file. "And you definitely weren't supposed to bring the kid." Adrian's hands curled into fists. "What did you do to her?" Marcus smirked. "What I had to. She was going to ruin everything. Our accounts. Our expansion deal. $10 million of misappropriated funds. Money I invested perfectly, by the way, would have been exposed because of this janitor who didn't know how to mind her business." Lily gasped, and tears spilled anew. "She's not just a janitor," the little girl cried, her voice trembling. "She's my mom." Marcus's expression didn't change. He simply shrugged. Children shouldn't interrupt adults. Adrian stepped forward so sharply that Lily stumbled backward, startled. But he didn't let himself look away from Marcus's face, not even for a heartbeat. "You kidnapped an innocent woman. Beat her. Left her tied up in an abandoned building. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Oh, spare me," Marcus scoffed. "I've known you for 15 years, Adrian. Don't pretend you suddenly have morals now." This time, Adrian didn't flinch, but something inside him shifted. He knew it. He felt it. That familiar cold emptiness, the walls he had lived behind for years, the belief that feelings were weaknesses, they weren't there. Not tonight. Not when a woman he barely knew but deeply remembered was fighting for her life only feet away. Not when a child was trusting him with every piece of her fragile world. I may not have cared before, Adrian said, his voice a low threat, but I care now. You hurt someone who didn't deserve it. And you terrified her daughter. His eyes sharpened like blades. That's something I will never forgive. Marcus laughed, shaking his head. Since when do you care about anything that isn't profit? Don't tell me you've grown a heart overnight. Then his eyes drifted toward Elena. Or is it because of her? Adrian didn't let Marcus's words provoke him directly, though they hit deeper than Marcus knew. He remembered the way Elena had looked at him in the elevator months ago. Not with fear, not with admiration, but with disappointment, and strange, sincere empathy. No one had looked at him like that in years. It haunted him more than he liked to admit. Marcus continued, let's be honest, Adrian. You're just upset because I acted first. You'd have fired her anyway. Adrian stepped closer. You don't know a damn thing about what I would have done. Oh, I do, Marcus said confidently. You don't get attached. You don't get involved. That's why you're successful. That's why we built an empire. That empire, Adrian said, voice trembling with controlled fury, is going to bury you. Marcus's smirk faltered. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his eyes. Adrian didn't wait for him to recover. He lunged. The sound of the impact echoed through the warehouse, flesh against metal and bone. Marcus stumbled backward, shocked by the force. Adrian didn't fight often, but every punch he delivered carried years of repressed emotion, years of isolation, years of humanity he had locked away. Marcus tried to strike back, but Adrian dodged, grabbed his arm, and slammed him into a stack of crates so hard they collapsed. Lily screamed and shielded Elena's body with hers. Elena winced, her breath hitching in pain, but her eyes opened wider as she watched Adrian fight, not with the coldness he used in boardrooms, but with something terrifyingly human. Marcus scrambled to his feet, blood trickling from his lip. You'll ruin everything, he spat. You think one woman is more important than our company? Adrian grabbed him by the collar. She's more important than you. He threw Marcus hard. The man's back struck a rusted metal beam, and he collapsed to the ground, coughing violently. The echo of the impact faded into the thick silence that followed. Then, sirens. Flashes of red and blue lights cut through the snowstorm outside, illuminating the warehouse in sharp bursts. Security had tracked Adrian's phone. Police were arriving fast. Marcus looked up, panic eclipsing his arrogance. Adrian, wait, he choked. But before he could finish his plea, security officers stormed in, guns out, voices loud, decisive. Marcus was dragged to his feet, handcuffed, and shoved toward the exit despite his frantic protests. Adrian didn't watch him leave. He was already sprinting to Elena. Lily was sobbing into her mother's lap when he reached them. Adrian knelt in the snow-dusted dirt, his breath clouding the cold air. Elena, he whispered urgently. Stay awake. Stay with me. Her eyelids fluttered. You came, she murmured faintly, her voice barely audible. Of course I did, he said, but his voice cracked despite his efforts. I'm getting you out of here. Elena's lips quivered. Why would the great Adrian Vale risk a storm, risk everything, for someone like me? He froze. Someone like me. The words sliced painfully. The fact that she even believed she was beneath him, when she had shown him more truth and humility than anyone else, hit him harder than Marcus's punches. He reached out gently, cupping her cold cheek. Because you matter, Elena. More than you know. Her eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering through the pain. Lily wrapped her tiny arms around both of them. Mom, he saved us. Sir saved us. Adrian swallowed hard, and for the first time in years, emotion pushed against the walls he had spent decades building. He had always been the man who closed doors, who turned away, who kept the world at arm's length. But tonight, the world had stepped into his arms whether he wanted it or not. Paramedics rushed over, lifting Elena carefully onto a stretcher. Lily refused to let go until they promised she could ride with her. Adrian stayed close as they moved, the cold air biting at his face, the storm still raging, but something inside him had quieted. When they reached the ambulance, Lily turned back to him, her eyes full of gratitude too big for her small frame. Sir, will we see you again? He didn't hesitate. Yes, he said, you will. Alina's hand reached weakly from the stretcher. Adrian took it, squeezing lightly so she felt his presence through the chaos. Her eyes softened, reflecting both pain and trust. "Thank you," she whispered. He opened his mouth to respond, but words failed him. Instead, he simply held her gaze until the doors closed and the ambulance pulled away, sirens fading into the blizzard. The warehouse behind him was a crime scene. Officers taped the area, questioned witnesses, and escorted Marcus into another vehicle. But Adrian stood apart from all of them, snow collecting on his shoulders, hair damp with melting flakes. The storm around him no longer felt as violent as the storm inside him. A security officer approached. "Sir, do you need a ride home?" Adrian looked into the snow-filled distance where the ambulance had gone. Home. The word suddenly felt empty. "No," he said quietly. "I know where I need to be." He walked toward his car, every step heavy with revelation. He wasn't returning to his penthouse. He wasn't returning to the office. For the first time, he wasn't returning to isolation. Tonight, he had broken every rule he built to protect himself. Tonight, he found something he didn't know he was missing. And someone, two someones, who made him feel it. As he drove into the storm, following the fading siren trail, something whispered in the back of his mind, something he hadn't allowed himself to imagine. This night wasn't the end. It was the beginning. But neither Adrian, nor Elena, nor little Lily knew that Marcus's arrest would only unravel the first thread, and the real danger was still watching from the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike again.